whether I want to admit it to myself or not, I began to question why I was only making films about men. You know, what else was there for me to learn? I mean, there's an endless amount I could learn, but really, in terms of my own growth, you know, I did a film about Robert Evans, the movie producer, called The Kid Stays in the Picture, and then I did a film on the Rolling Stones. Now, both artists represent, Bob produced all the movies I loved growing up, and the Stones were the music I grew up with. And so I looked at both those films in a way as me trying to identify a father figure. And my father was a PE teacher, and I'm not very athletic, so I didn't really relate on that level. And the Kurt film was also very autobiographical, and I think in terms of me sort of exploring issues related to my parents. My parents and Kurt's parents were born the same years, same generational issues, and same sort of narcissistic tendencies, which is not specific to them, but to that whole generation, the boomer generation. So Jane offered an opportunity to explore something that I hadn't explored. That was one. More importantly, when I looked at the, sorry, that was a long roundabout answer. The more directly, when I looked at the footage.
And you'd never explored a female figure in a film?
No, never. Right. But when I looked at the footage, it was like watching the moon landing. I mean, I instantly recognized that there were, that on one hand, the historical and cultural significance of Jane's work was as profound as landing a ship on the moon in the 1960s. Right. I mean, it was something that had never happened in the history of evolution and would never happen again.
Because she saw something that changed the way we saw.
Well, not only that, she went, nobody had ever gone into the wild to study chimpanzees. Ever.
Isn't that strange when you hear her tell the story that she was the first one?
The world wasn't so small back then, right. You know, so going to Africa to study chimpanzees was not a simple thing. Yeah. And the fact is that chimpanzees spooked, so they would run away, and people didn't know how to handle that. So they would go out, they would try to do it, and they'd fail epically. You know, people would go out there for 2 months, 3 months, not see a chimp and leave. Failure was not an option for Jane. So she was going to stick with it no matter what. And so there was that aspect. You know, there was, here's someone walking into nature, walking into Eden, and not only observing, but getting so close that she's essentially invited to be a housemate with them. And then during the course of her study, they realized that it was humans and chimps should have no close contact, and that humans could never touch chimps again. So essentially, you see this person go from a total outsider to having this completely intimate experience where they're grooming the chimps to being unallowed, disinvited to do that ever again. And so this would never happen. Cinematically, what Hugo achieved, Hugo the cameraman, can't even be put into words. It alone is as difficult as trying to land a ship on the moon. Hugo tried to shoot color 16mm by himself in Africa without the ability to see what he was doing. He had only shot one film previous to this. It was an absolute neophyte. And technically, to create these images was, I think, one of the great cinematic achievements of his time.
And you've shot in 16mm.
I started my career in 16mm, and it's a freaking nightmare. I mean, and you can't do it by one person alone. It's like, it's just unheard of. So,
and yet you struggled to find a frame that was overexposed and bad footage.
Oh, Hugo, because it was his first film, and his second film, but first big assignment for National Geographic, he couldn't see the dailies. He wasn't going to be in DC when they screened them or developed them. So he insisted on making sure that everything was perfect. And there was never a shot that was underexposed or overexposed. Now, Jane hated this. Jane would see some action, go, Hugo, film it. And we'd be like, no, the light's bad. And she'd go, Hugo, film it. And we need to get financing. And he would be like, I'm not shooting it. Sorry, Jane. And I understand where they were both coming from, but fortunately, in time, he got all the coverage he needed, and we're the great beneficiaries of this beautiful film.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, learn from the best minds in the world, and connect with a community of passionate people building the best versions of themselves. Just click on the link below, and I'll see you on the inside.